There's one main reason why I don't vote, and here it is. You ready? I will never vote for someone I don't believe in. So what do I mean by this? What does it mean to believe in someone? Well, before we get into that, my name is Sebastian Rey. This is The List Podcast, Episode 3. If you want to know what this podcast is about, listen to Episode 0, titled What is the List? Also, this podcast is available on both YouTube and Spotify. Links to all this will be in the description. With that out of the way, let's get on with the episode. When I say I'll never vote for someone I don't believe in, there are actually two things I'm talking about. It's not just about agreeing with someone's positions and takes. There are plenty of politicians who have said things I agree with, at least on the surface, but that doesn't mean I believe in those politicians. Too many times, people running for office will say things that sound good, and then as soon as they get elected, all of a sudden they can't follow through with their promises. For me to believe in someone, I have to believe that they're not a sociopath who's just saying whatever they need to say to get elected, which is a rarity on its own. However, even if someone is an honest person, I still might not believe in them, because even if someone is honest, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're capable of doing what they say they're going to do. How many times have you seen an elected official try to get something done, only to be stopped by some external party or process? Someone who can't get things done, no matter how honest they are, still doesn't deserve to be a leader. Even if there's a good reason why they can't get anything done, it's still a problem. You can point all the fingers you want, but in the end, you still haven't accomplished what you said you would. For me to believe in someone, I have to believe that they're both honest and capable of doing what they say they're gonna do. But even if I thought a politician was both honest and capable, that still wouldn't be good enough for me to believe in them, because they also have to be running on platforms I'm interested in. What does that mean? Basically, it means they have to be pushing for things I care about. There are a lot of social issues politicians will discuss, like abortion rights and immigration policy, and I think these things are important, but they're not really what I care about. In fact, the things I care most about are not things you can vote for at all. For example, I have thought, for a while, that the United States should have what I call a termination clause. Basically, it should be possible for the public to vote out anyone who holds high office or has a high-ranking government position at any time. Even if you were elected last month, if you turn around and start acting in corrupt ways and pushing for things that I'm strongly against, I should be able to vote you out immediately. Not in 3 years, when your turn is over. Now. When people were living in tribes, was the tribe leader somebody you had to put up with for a specific period of time? No. If the tribe leader was making bad decisions and leading the tribe in a direction nobody liked, all the members could just get together and throw them out. If the public voted you in, they should be able to vote you out. Of course, there are many people who hold high office who are not appointed by the public, which is its own issue. Also, how exactly the termination clause would work is something that would have to be ironed out. For example, if the president and vice president got voted out back to back, who would take their place? Would you have to hold another national election? Also, how many votes would be required to vote somebody out? And how would that voting procedure work? Would everyone have to cast their votes at the same time for their votes to count? These are important questions you'd have to answer. Because the thing is, this termination clause can be taken advantage of by bad actors, depending on how it works. If 100% of the population has to vote against you for you to be thrown out, well then it's going to be easy for corrupt politicians to stay in power. You just have to stop one person from voting and you keep your power. Or, let's say that 50% of the country is required to vote someone out, but everyone has to vote on the same day. Well, it's going to be hard to get half the country to all vote you out on the same day because people have jobs and obligations. This is why I think, when it comes to the termination clause, votes should have a period of validity. Basically, if you want to vote someone out of office, your vote should last for 3 or 4 months at minimum. So instead of everyone having to vote at the same time, as long as many people vote in the same general time frame, their votes will still count. This is also why I think we should be pushing for a digital voting system to go along with physical voting. If you were able to vote through your phone instead of having to go to a physical location, this whole process would be a lot easier. In any case, I think a termination clause, if it's implemented correctly, would help in checking corrupt behavior, because people in high-ranking government positions would have to be on their toes at all times, hoping the public doesn't turn on them. There's just one problem. Where do I go to vote for that? Which politician is actually pushing to implement a termination clause? Who's even discussing it? Oh, that's right, no one. There's nowhere I can go to vote for this. In fact, most of the issues I really truly care about are not things you can vote for because nobody is pushing for them. So if the things I care about most simply don't exist in the public discourse, why would I go and vote? Now I know what people are gonna say, I can already hear it. But what about voting for the lesser of two evils? If you don't vote for my candidate, democracy is gonna come crashing down. First off, if you have to vote for one specific person or the system goes splat, how exactly is that democratic? Where's the free choice there? Vote for me, or else. Sounds like a hostage situation. One might even call it hostage democracy. If you can only vote for one person, if that is the only option you have or all of democracy fails, well, it seems to me that you lost democracy a long time ago. Now, do we live in a system where you can technically vote for different people? Yes. If you live in a developed country, when you visit the voting booth, there are various candidates you can vote for. So technically speaking, we have some form of democracy, at least on paper. But if the only parties that ever win are red or blue, then there's an issue. Nobody dreams about a democracy where you can only vote for one or two parties. That is, unless you're a tyrant. Ideally, democracy is supposed to be about having many choices, not just two. When you go to the ice cream shop, you want a variety of flavors available. You don't just want vanilla or chocolate only. But unfortunately, the way our electoral system is set up in the United States leads to a two-party system. This is not a new idea. Many people have criticized the two-party system in the past. CPG Grey did a popular video series on how this works, which I'll link to in the description. So yes, you can technically vote for parties outside of red or blue. But if those other parties never even stand a chance of winning because people are afraid to vote for anything other than red or blue, then it's still a two-party system. And a two-party system is bad on its own. But if that two-party system effectively turns into a one-party system where everyone must vote for one party or bad things will happen, then in my humble opinion, you no longer have any democracy. It doesn't matter who the quote-unquote good party is. In Russia, you can technically vote for different parties too, but somehow Putin always seems to win. Why is that? Because people must vote, or feel like they must vote, for Putin, otherwise bad things will happen to them. But let's just say we're not there yet. Let's say the US is not like Russia. Yes, we're a two-party system, but at least both parties stand a good chance of winning. You just have to vote for the party that's less evil. The big problem with that is, the lesser of two evils is still evil. And if you keep voting for evil, things will always get worse for you. Unless you agree with 100% of the choices your favorite politician makes, it's almost a guarantee that even your favorite politician is going to do things that you don't like, possibly even things that worsen your situation. And when you keep voting for that, you are reinforcing this behavior. Sure, that person might make some decisions you like, but if you know that they're still somewhat evil, then you also know that they're going to make choices that aren't ideal for you and what you want. If you vote for that person anyway, you are essentially saying it's okay to make those bad choices. It's okay to be evil. It's okay to do things I don't want you to do. And when people consistently vote for things they don't want, is it really a surprise when the society you live in starts to have traits and characteristics that you don't want it to have? You voted for that. You voted for evil. It doesn't matter if it was the lesser evil. When people keep voting for evil over and over, it still ultimately leads to a downward trend in the issues and values you care about. To make it worse, if you have a two-party system which effectively forces you to vote for people you don't want, I'm sorry, but I don't believe that's fair or democratic in any way, and I'm not going to participate in a system which I believe is unrepresentative and unfair. Of course, most people have a very short memory, especially when it comes to politics. Many people are only looking at the past couple of years and the next couple of years when casting their ballots. But the thing is, people have been voting using the logic of lesser of two evils for a long time, at least in the US. And in some cases, voting this way doesn't even seem so bad. In some cases, things might even seem to be getting better, at least in the short term. But if you were to zoom out over very long periods of time, you'd still see a downward trend in a lot of important issues. Again, it depends on the issues you care about. There are some things that have arguably gotten better in the last centuries. In comparison to medieval times, there's a lot less murder and a lot less starvation, at least for now. These are positives. Also, maybe things are going great for you. Maybe every time the person you vote for gets into power, they make things better for you and your life circumstances. If so, awesome. But I'd venture to guess there are a lot of people who do not see an upward trend in the issues they care about. In fact, I'd venture to guess that most people in the US are seeing the opposite of what they want. But I think what people often don't realize is that this downward trend happens because people have been voting for the lesser of two evils over and over again, and they've been doing that for a long time. And again, when you keep voting for evil, don't be surprised when things you care about go downhill. Also, on this lesser of two evils point, nobody actually knows who the lesser of two evils is. You think you do, everyone thinks they do. But democracy depends on information. In other words, your ability to vote for the best candidate depends on your ability to be informed about the various candidates. And if you live in an environment where everyone is giving you different and contradictory information, it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to make a truly objective and informed decision about who the best candidate is, because the information you're getting is not consistent. No matter who you listen to, you can be almost certain that some part of the picture is missing. For all you know, they could all be equally evil, and you wouldn't be able to tell because no one is actually giving you an unbiased story. Even if there is good information out there, it's going to be hard to tell what information is good because there's so much bad or incomplete information mixed in with it. Inevitably, what everyone does in this kind of environment is they end up putting their trust in narratives and information which seem to be true according to their own personal biases. But unfortunately, that just results in political bubbles and tribalism. You might ask, what's the alternative though? The alternative is not participating in a damaged and corrupt system. If a system does not faithfully represent what you want, don't enable it by continuing to vote for people and things you don't want. Some individuals right now claim they're going to clean house and get rid of the corruption. In my opinion, though, this will never happen. I personally believe that the corruption is so deeply entrenched that no one person will be able to change it, even if they had the intention to. In my personal opinion, I think the system will have to crash to some extent before it can be rebuilt in a better direction. I don't want that to be the case. I hope that's not the case. But it seems to me that the problem is ultimately a human problem. Humans, no matter what their background, seem to consistently find power alluring. We like to assume this is not the case. We like to believe that the human default is to not want power and to not be corrupt. But I think the truth is the opposite. I think most people, by default, have some degree of power-seeking inclination. And when given the opportunity, most people will try to keep the power they attain. This goes for anyone, man, woman, black, white, any gender, any ideology. Power is tempting, and the only way you can avoid being corrupted by it is to either have very high levels of self-control or to have systems in place which are effective in keeping that power in check. This is what the Founding Fathers were trying to do when they built the government the way they did. They were trying to create a system which kept power in check. But unfortunately, the system they built was based on old technologies and customs. As society advanced, bad actors eventually found out how to exploit that system. I don't think most people even realize the degree to which the government is corrupted, because propaganda has got them so good that they can't recognize what corruption in their own party looks like. They think only the other party is corrupt, never closely examining how their own party screws them. It is possible that we could have a positive restructuring of governmental systems without catastrophe, but I don't think that's likely. In order to have a peaceful overturning of the guard, there are really only two ways you can do it. Either the people in power must intentionally vote against their own power and create systems which essentially make life harder for themselves, or the public has to protest. And I'm not talking about a couple thousand people in Times Square. I mean everyone, as in hundreds of millions of people across the US, have to be willing to stop what they're doing and protest. And they have to be willing to continue that protest until the government bends to the will of the people. And I know that sounds cool in a movie, but without some kind of crash or collapse, we'll probably never see that level of protest. And the reason why is simple, because in most cases, the only time people really change is when they're forced to, or when they have nothing else to lose. And that is a cynical viewpoint, but it's usually the truth. As long as people are placated and occupied enough, most people won't have the motivation to go out and do something life-changing. Some people will, but not in the numbers you'd need. And by the way, even if we could overturn these power structures peacefully, the vast majority of people are simply not thoughtful enough to figure out how to restructure government. Because toppling power is only the first half of the solution. You also need to put just as much, if not more, effort into figuring out what a new system would look like. But since coming up with solutions is intellectually difficult, most people do not attempt to do it. And the few who do often have overly narrow solutions. In other words, their solutions don't account for enough factors and variables, which means those solutions will never work, regardless of how idyllic they might sound. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the government can be changed by simply voting for the right person or the right policies. If you believe that, then vote for whomever you think will make those changes. This is why I don't vote. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to subscribe, share, like, and comment, all the algorithm things. Also, I have a book out called Value Assignment: The Primary Function of the Brain. It was a life project that I spent over 15 years working on, and I would love for people to actually read it. All links will be in the description. The next episode of the list should be out in a week or two, but I don't know what topic I'm going to cover yet. Just watch out for it. Anyway, that's all for this episode. And remember, just because you can easily assess a problem doesn't mean you can easily assess a solution. Later.